Oh Lord, look what the cat dragged in. Hi, this is a voiceover narration. It is actually going to be my first voiceover. I am using a lavalier mic that Patrick got us for Christmas. Today we are drilling special projects. You probably watched the video that Carol put together a few days ago where she set them up. This is November and December projects. This is January 4th today as I'm editing this video. This was filmed yesterday. I'm probably not going to do constant commentary. I'm probably just going to insert a few pieces here and there as I narrate what's going on. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm drilling holes and blanks. Fairly cold day out in the shop. Not real bad like we've had it. Enough that I got my jacket on. There are a few tips and techniques to drilling. I'm going to cover a few of them as they come up here. Of course, I've got the experience of hindsight, having already done this, but I'm not too sure of the order and exactly when things happen. As things of interest come up, I'll point them out. You see to my left side, there is a drill press. It's actually a very nice radial arm drill press. It tilts, it's got a radial arm that moves in and out. And I do use it for a lot of projects. But for these special projects, I prefer to drill on the lathe. And the reason is that in an ideal world, everything lines up so that you're drilling down the center of a blank, be it square, rectangular, or even round. But there are caveats to that. And there are times when you're going to want to move over to the drill press. You're taking for granted that the blank itself is going to be, how do I word it? Perpendicular sides. Even if it's round, is it tapered or is it the same thickness throughout? Generally speaking, blanks are pretty uniform throughout. And this also comes into play when I take the ends down and fit the ends on the disc grinder. You are taking for granted that the blank's going to be uniform. Okay, what just happened there is I drilled a plastic blank as opposed to Alumilite. It was like an acrylic plastic, and they tend to grab. And what happened was my Morse taper was fitting real loose. So it's unintuitive, but I'm using 3-in-1 oil, and I'm cleaning the dust and oiling the Morse taper. And see, it fits tighter now. It's a suction fit. I'm trying to think of what the word is, but it grabs better with the oil on it. You will see though, the companion blank to this pen, I have problems with this one too. It's still not quite as tight as I would like. I've been having this problem lately with the Morse taper on this, and I'm not really sure what's causing it. If there's a scratch inside the quill, I've inspected the outside on the drill bit and I don't see any scratches or gouges or chips, but there's something that's causing it not to fit as tight. Yeah, see, it popped out there. It's not fitting as tight as I would like. Now, the dilemma when that happens and the bit sticks in the blank and the chuck starts revolving. Do you try to grab that chuck with your bare hand and it's going to heat your hand up and it's going to hurt? But the alternative, if you can't catch hold of it, you've got to worm that blank off of the bit. And that sometimes proves impossible. There have actually been times where I have had to take a hammer and literally break the blank to get it off the bit. And if you're lucky, you don't break the bit when you're doing that. Now I'm back to Alumilite though, and everything's fine. Usually plastics are hard. And I'm not using the proper drill bit for plastics. Obviously, because I do so many, I don't want 3 sets of drill bits. A set for wood, a set for plastics, and a set for resins, epoxy or Alumilite. I basically use the same drill bit throughout. I'm trying to think of the technical term for the bit that I use. But there are different types of bits for different jobs. In the effort for productivity and cost efficiency, I try to just get away with 1 set of bits. I forget what I was talking about before I ran into that problem, but I guess it doesn't matter. Basically, you just want to work slow and clean your flutes out frequently. That's why I'm backing it out. And I'll pull it out and start cleaning the flutes. Back into the hole. And just work slowly. Let the bit do the work. And it gets really hard down toward the end to take your time and go slow. And I've had this problem a few times throughout this session. If I see it, I'll point it out where, yeah, right there. See, I shook my head. I'm getting toward the end, and I've got stuff in my flutes. I don't want to rush the job at the end and blow out the end of that blank. You got to go real slow. See, I only had a fraction of an inch, 1/16 of an inch left, but you don't want to push through the end. It's better to take your time. There is a dilemma when you get down toward the end of the hole and you know you're getting close. If you pull the bit out, you're going to have to put it back in. And because that whole tailstock is so heavy, you got to feel your way because you could push through the remaining material of that blank and cause a severe blowout just by pushing it back in. So it's really a question of feel. You got to take your time and consider what you're doing. There is a learning curve to this, to using the lathe. The drill press has its own set of problems, and there's a learning curve to that too. You got to focus on lining your hole up in the center on the drill press, and every time you pull the quill back out, you've got to put it in again. That question has come up though. Do you prefer to drill on the lathe or the drill press, and why? The answer is yes, the lathe. I prefer to drill on the lathe. Now, women in particular, and I'm not trying to be sexist there, because there are awful strong women out there, but Carol and Caitlin in particular have a problem using this lathe for drilling because it is harder. You need more strength to manipulate things as opposed to a drill press. They would prefer to use a drill press. And I find it's not an either-or argument. It is both. It's like the whole barbecue adage. Well, do you prefer North Carolina, Texas, or Memphis? The answer is yes. Kansas barbecue, all of it. Barbecue's barbecue. It's all good. Each section, each type of barbecue serves its purpose. It's not necessarily either or. Dogs or cats? Are you a dog or a cat person? Both. Depends on whatever the particular job calls for, what I'll use. But yes, as a rule of thumb, I do prefer the lathe because I am pretty certain when I drill on the lathe that the hole's going straight down the middle of the blank. Now I changed, I think I'm at the 12 fives now, and I am using a duller bit. And you can see how I'm cranking it. It's a big bit, and it's also fairly dull. And as you're watching these videos, especially a hobbyist might ask, well, if you're using a dull bit, just change the bit out. I actually got 12.5 new bits sitting on the shelf. The same as when I'm turning on the lathe. See, just that much left, and I came up short, so now I've got to extend the bit just a little bit more. But the problem is when I stick that back in, I got to be careful I don't blow out. See how I'm real gentle tapping it, getting it close. I don't want to push through and plow through and blow out that hole. And boom, that was it. Yep, that much left. Anyway, back to what I was saying with the sharpness of cutters. My turning tools too. I do use dull cutters. I try to squeeze what life I can out of my tools because I do so much work. I don't have the luxury of changing that cutter every 50, 100 blanks. I would go broke. And that's the cold truth behind it. Same as drill bits. I am squeezing what life I can out of that bit. But yes, it does need changed at this point. It is at end of life. And you definitely can feel it, when you're trying to crank it into the blank and it doesn't want to cut. And there is a such thing as going too far with a cutting tool or a drill bit that you start blowing out blanks and shattering things, and you don't want to hit that point either. You got to sort of know when to say when on your tools. Jamming my music. I am listening to that 70s channel today. It is the Wandering Sheep Radio Network. Play a lot of 70s music. I grew up kind of country and a little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll. Um, I would say I lean toward the countryside, but I also like classic rock. As a matter of fact, if I would have to define my exact tastes, it would be Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and The Doors. Would be my three bands over everything. But then next to that would be Hank Williams Jr. So Waylon Jennings. Varied taste. I always have had varied taste. Um, Lately I'm getting into throwback 70s music. Disco, John Denver, I mean, just across the board. And that's why I like this one station. They play a little bit of everything. A little bit of funk, a little bit of disco. I also like K-Jazz. I watch a YouTube channel, turned me on to K-Jazz in Long Beach, California. I think it's 88 point something on their dial, but they also have streaming internet on the various servers. If you go online, look up K-Jazz. It is a very classic station. Um, One of the few left, really. Not a lot of advertisement and a lot of really good jazz and blues. And some of the classics like Frank Sinatra and that kind of thing. I find as I'm getting older, I get tired of listening to the same thing over and over all my life. I'm spreading my wings a little bit. I'm sort of reaching out there and trying to experience music that I haven't really listened to. A lot of classical too. I just never really took the time. So the thing about this job, it's slow and painstaking. I'm showing there, I am at the 12.5 right there. There's not a lot of meat in that blank. When I started that, you'll notice I took a lot of time to center it too and get that drill right down the middle. There is not a lot of wall thickness left after you drill a 12.5 millimeter hole in that. I mean, you probably are talking under, yeah, probably around an 1/8 inch wall thickness at that at the point that you got left. Not a lot of room for error. You can see by the amount of shavings that it's taking out. That is one big hole that I'm putting through there. At the end of these, you'll notice I'm reaming the blank. After I poke through, then I will work the bit in and out a few times to kind of clear the walls, the inside walls of any kind of snags or burrs, to kind of open the hole up, basically ream it out. Now, technically, if you are a machinist, you do use reamers, or actually a separate bit that you use to do that job when you're working with metal. But I'm just using my bit and kind of cleaning the hole out. It's hard to video stuff like this. You kind of get in your little zone. I'm obviously spacing out in my little zone there. Just doing my thing. You know, I'd like to sit down and talk about all the tips and techniques and that, but really it's just a learning curve. And in a lot of what I do, that's not one size fits all, and it's not a matter of, oh, this works 100% of the time across the board, because it just isn't. It isn't that way. And really, any kind of skilled labor, different blanks demand different things, different feels, different techniques. I have a video. It's going to be a real-time turning video that was put out. I don't know if it's out yet or when it's going to come out, but it is an acroluster blank, and I didn't realize it was acroluster. Acroluster usually is in a square blank, and this was molded in a tube. And I put it on the lathe, and I'm on my first pass, and I'm realizing as I'm taking this first pass that something's wrong. I'm getting a lot of chatter, a lot of chippage, and just so I'm thinking, what the heck? I hit the end of that blank, and boom, I blow out the end of it. And the video, it's obvious. I let the camera run, and I took it over to my disc grinder, and I took a little bit of the end to blow out damage off, and ground it down about, a little over 1/8 of an inch. Put it back on the lathe, and I explained what happened. You can obviously see at that point, though, that you use a different touch with different materials when you're turning. And I assumed that that was an Alumilite blank, and I was using a heavy touch. And with acroluster, you got to lighten your touch up a lot. I used the phrase in a previous video, imagine you're shaving Mike Tyson's privates. And that's a vulgar way of saying it, but man, you don't want to wake Mike Tyson up. You take very, very light passes with a very sharp tool when you're doing acroluster. And drilling's the same way. You're going to use different force with different material. If it's wood, you're going to apply a different touch than if it's Alumilite or acroluster or plastic. As you feed it in there, you start to get the feel of that blank. How's it drilling? That one's going smooth. Now, I backed it out. I'm going to clean my flutes. I don't want a lot of waste material in that hole overheating. What speed do you drill at? That's a good question. Across the board, you'll notice I'm not adjusting my speed back and forth too much. Across the board, I tend to drill around 800 RPM on this lathe. Now, how true is that to 800 RPM? I don't know. That's why I use the caveat on this lathe. I have my speed set between 8 and 900 RPM. Now, I find, generally speaking, that that's a good speed to drill at. Alumilite, you can speed it up a little bit. Wood, you're going to want to slow down a little bit. Plastic, you want to slow down drastically. Plastics overheat. They tend to melt. And I'm going so fast on this one as I drilled that plastic, you saw that it was melting. I mean, I could probably stand to slow the speed down a little bit for plastics, but I'm too lazy. It's the difference between a hobbyist and somebody who's doing something for a profession. That hobbyists like to use. A good example is turning tools. And I've had that question. What tools do you use to turn with? 99.99% I use a round carbide cutter that's a negative rake grind on it. 99.999% of the time I use the same cutter across the board. The difference being wood, you can't really use negative rake for wood. I use a regular round carbide cutter for wood. But don't you use square and the diamond tip and all the different fancy tools they have? Oh, I've got all the tools. But I don't want to take the time to have to change out tools. And even if you got two things side by side, you got to stop what you're doing, pick up their tool. I got a notification on my YouTube. I was watching something, one of the classic turners that use high-speed steel. And it's the same thing on that, using high-speed steel. Professional turners, by and large, like to use the skew. Why the skew? Because you could do all the different shapes and that with one tool. You don't have to keep putting things down and grabbing other tools. You'll notice right there, you'll see a lot when I pull the tailstock back and I basically bounce the tailstock on the bed. What I'm doing there is I'm actually shaking the dust out of the flutes. There's a reason why I'm doing that. But back to what I was saying, professional turners, traditionally people making furniture, table legs and such in a factory, like to use a skew, and they use a skew all day long. Because they're using one tool. They don't have to change their grip. They don't have to change their memory of how the tool's cutting. So hobbyists tend to like to buy different tools and all the fancy stuff. As you start doing things in batches, batch work, and large scale production, you tend to try not to use different tools all the time. It's a lot easier on you just to use the same thing over and over. You can tell the way things cut by how I crank that handle. This one's getting a little on the duller side. It's not cutting as nice. And you see when I move my fingers around to get a better grip, I need more leverage. What kind of life can you expect from a drill bit? Depends on what you're drilling, but generally speaking, you go through 10 blanks, you're starting to lose some of the sharpness on it. And I'm drilling, I'm not going to say hundreds, but yeah, I would venture to guess that I'm putting 100 blanks on a drill bit. Same as my turning tool, my cutting tool. I would venture to guess I'm going around 100 blanks I'm stepping off camera. It is that time of year. I had to blow my nose at this point. I debated bringing my box of tissues over, but nobody wants to see that, so I'm stepping off camera. I'm being a mouth breather today. You'll notice when I'm breathing through my mouth. It gets to the point where you got to go blow your nose. Got a bit of a neck beard going on too, so I'm just being a troglodyte today. Part of the joy from working at home, you don't have to get dressed up for it. Why do I tap my blank on the bed of the lathe? Well, that's self-explanatory. It should be obvious. I'm cleaning the dust out of it. I get in a routine. I put my vice tools down on the bed of the lathe in the same place every time. Square blanks, I tend to just do a lot of hand tightening, but then when you start doing the round ones, you got to clamp them down. So then I get my tools out, so then I start using my tools across the board. Put a bit of a clamp on everything, just so I don't have any problems with the pen vise bouncing loose. Toward the end here, you'll see a couple times I get out of my autopilot and I go to pick up my drill chuck key to loosen up the vise. It's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? It happens. A lot of what I do is autopilot, and that's really when you start making mistakes. You really got to stop and think about what you're doing. You just kind of zone out and get into a zone, I guess is the best way of putting it. Get into a rhythm. I'm doing a lot more talking on this one than I actually intended to do. I guess I'm feeling chatty today. I just did the editing for the video that will be following this one on the glue up. And I did that real time, narrated as I was doing the video. Yeah, that bouncing right there. I'm doing that on purpose to clean the flutes. I'm shaking the dust out of the flutes in a real bit. I'm not being angry or aggressive. See right there, I'm toward the end. I'm going real slow, feeling my way. That's where you're going to blow outs right at the end. 99% of the blanks that you're going to lose drilling in this using this method, you're going to lose by blowing through the end too fast. And you want to slow down and feel your way. I debated on running this video at 2x speed. The problem with that is I would lose the machine noises. And I really want to keep them in this video. It is right at the extension of what I would consider too long. Here's the thing though. If you find this kind of thing relaxing and enjoyable to watch, then have at it. It's 50 minutes of joy for you. You know, if you find it tedious and you've had enough, turn it off. I'm not getting paid for this. You know, I'm not twisting anybody's arm to watch this. I don't want to shortchange those that would find it interesting. I'm the same way. I don't really watch turning videos anymore. What do you watch on YouTube? I honestly don't watch turning videos. Used to. But when you do it for a living, and you do it all the time, it's not that I'm big-headed. Oh, I know it all. Of course not. I just don't really gain pleasure from watching turning anymore like I used to. But genres that I do watch, I tend to be one of those types of people that I like videos like this. I will kick back and I will watch somebody do whatever it is that they're doing for 30, 40, 50 minutes. That's fine. I don't watch television. And to a great extent anymore, I don't really watch movies. We have Amazon, Hulu, Netflix. You know, Carol watches her sitcoms and judge shows and stuff that she watches. I just don't find pleasure in television anymore. I find most of it to be asinine, to be quite frank. In movies, I like classic movies. I'm talking classic. I'm go back to Humphrey Bogart, classic. 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way through the 70s. But I am not much of the guy flicks, especially the Fast and Furious. I hate Fast and Furious. I really do. I hate explosion movies. I don't like the macho movies and all the explosions and special effects, and it's just not my thing. I miss the day when acting and dialogue, ran the movie. Now it's all the special effects and stunts run the movie. And I find all the actors to be chuckleheads at this point. And if that offends you, well, I'm sorry. That's just my personal opinion. But I have turned to YouTube for my viewing pleasure. And I am very eclectic in the things that I watch. But I would rather watch somebody in real life doing something that they enjoy doing, I think, than anything else. And I tend to watch more YouTube for the personality than the subject matter. Now I do watch subject matter. If I need to learn how to do something, then I check out YouTube videos and learn how to do it. But for the most part, I watch for personality. And while YouTube analytics tends to say not and otherwise, I tend to think that there's a lot of people like me that tend to watch stuff like this. Nope, tight fit. So I had a problem with that one. I think I switched to 8mm. I'm kind of losing track of what I'm doing. My 8mm bit, for whatever reason, is undersized. And I'm having a problem even in the Alumalights. I'm having a problem with 8mm being tight. Now I put that down. I'm gonna say, okay, I'll take care of that later. And then I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, no, I'm going to show how that's done. So I'm stepping off camera. I'm going to grab my file. There's no point in waiting till later. I'll just do it right here on camera and take care of it. That's a plastic blank, acetate blank. So I got a round file. And it takes a few minutes, but take your time and just ream out the hole until it fits. You want to do both sides evenly is the caveat on this. See, I turned the blank around. So I'm not counting strokes, but I'm doing roughly the same number of strokes on each side of the blank to try to keep things as even and level as I can. Again, I'm not being painstaking counting strokes or anything. Getting better, a little bit more. Take your time, there's no hurry. All of this stuff that I do, you can't rush. I see some of the people on YouTube, oh, watch me turn this pen in 30 seconds. Well, great. Bully for you. I mean, I can horse through a blank too. That's not. But I'm selling stuff to people. I'm not going to rush through a blank. I'm going to take my time and do the job right. And you know, if it takes me an hour and a half to do a pen, that is what it is. That's how long it takes. I often say I'm not punching a clock. Am I perfect? No, absolutely not. You know, do I make mistakes? Yep, all the time. Now this is a good one. I'm remembering. Now this is the companion blank to that. What just happened? Somebody made a boo-boo and it wasn't me. I don't know if I pointed at the door or not. Am I in the right place? I might not be in the right place yet. Let me hold that thought for later. Oh boy, I blew through the end of that one. You could hear when I blew through the end. And I'll check it. Yeah. That crunch is not a good sound. When you hit the end of that blank and you hear that crunch, it's like, oh boy. So when I pull it out, see, I'll look at the end. And I did have a little bit of blowout on the wall. So what I'm doing there is I'm gauging the size of the tube to the end. It's like, yeah, I've got plenty left. I can just grind that off. That was a boo-boo. I blew through the end of that blank. Having a hard time centering the bit in the jaws of the chuck. You really got to be careful. It's easier in a drill press because it's up and down, but when it's horizontal on a lathe like that, you got to make sure that you're centered between the three jaws inside that chuck and your bit's centered. It's very easy on smaller bits, especially to get that off, and then you'll drill your hole lopsided. I think I might have missed the part. I think it was on the 8 millimeters. But as I was drilling those 8 millimeters, I drilled a hole and I went to put the tube in, and the tube would not fit. I'm like, what's going on there? And I compare the tubes, and it's a bigger tube. And right then, the little light bulb went off in my head. I knew what happened. It's a Princess pen, and it's an 8 and a 10 millimeter tubes. And Carol, when she was filming hers, and she was on autopilot and not thinking, put the 10 millimeter tube in the 8 millimeter stack. And like, oh boy, somebody messed up. But it happens. So I basically, on that one, I had to grab the 10 millimeter bit and I just re-drilled the hole to 10 millimeter and everything's fine. Now, had it been the other way around, I would have had a problem. Then I would have had a 10 millimeter hole in a blank that needed an 8 millimeter hole, and I would have had to use a new blank. And in that case, we would have tried to make lemonade out of that one, and we would have tried to convert it to a cigar pen or something, and just as a buy it now. But it happens. You know, once again, I go back to the autopilot thing. You get on autopilot, and I do it several times in here, and I might have missed the opportunity to talk about it, but little places where I mess up, it's like, whoops. I did one just the day before this, 2 days ago for me because I'm talking, but the day before this, I was turning Facebook pens, and I had the same customer wanted two pens where she wanted 5 bumps with 2 and 4 bigger. So I did the first one, no problem. And I'm turning the second pen right back to back right afterwards. And the difference between that and what we call a Ronda 5 is basically a 5 bump with the center bump small. The only difference is on the Ronda 5, the outside bumps are the same size as the 2 and 4 bumps. So I put it on autopilot and I turned a Ronda 5 out of it. It's like, oh shoot. The minute I cut that first valley, and it's like, oops, and I can't correct that one. So I had to go into Carol. I turned the Ronda 5 and we'll polish it up. It'll be a buy it now. And I had to go in and beg for another blank. Sorry. I messed up. And sometimes you can't fix it. Sometimes you just have to use another blank. And luckily we had one. So I turned the right pen with the next blank and everything was fine. And we caught it. You know, we make mistakes all day long, the both of us. And you just luck out, and with two eyes, two sets of eyes on it really helps. But, most of the time we catch it and we fix it. But none of us are immune to mistakes. Oops. And it's funny that I'm one of those people, I get mad at myself rather than the other person. When the other person makes a mistake, I'll joke with them. I recently, I think it was that Acroluster video I was talking about earlier, and I facetiously was yelling at Carol when I recovered. I think I said something in nature of, you could have told me it was Acroluster. I said that in complete jest, thinking at the time that, well, I'm obviously not going to produce this video, or if I do, it's not going to be a real time. But then the two of us together decided, well, why not put it out as real time to show that this does happen? I'm not perfect. And you can't put out videos all the time showing things that, well, he doesn't make any mistakes. Well, that's not true. That's not reality. The reality is I do make mistakes. But I was basically being facetious and joking with her when I said that. I get angry with myself when I make mistakes. I kick myself. And you really can't do that either because it happens. And you just kind of got to go with the flow and fix it. Don't worry about it. Fix it and move on. What happens to me is you get on that run of, things going south. Oh, another snot break. I'll be right back. You get to that point you just can't breathe. And it's like, all right, gotta go blow my nose. I'm trying not to, but your day starts going south on you. You make one mistake, and then you let that get you down, and you make another one, and things come in threes. And sometimes it gets so bad you just got to stop and walk away. And that happens to me. I can't just make the mistake and get over the hurdle and just move on. And that's what I need to learn to do. And I still have trouble with that one. The older I get, the more I learn, the more patient I'm becoming. But yeah, I kick myself hard. And you really can't do that because when you do as much volume as we do, you make the mistakes. And sometimes you just gotta stand back and laugh at them. Sometimes they're so stupid. It's like, what am I doing? And I learned that from a lot of the people that I've watched through the years on YouTube, that if you're going to have a YouTube channel, you're better off showing warts and all. People like to see that. People like to watch YouTube and look at that person and say, oh, he's stupid, he's dumber than I am. People don't like seeing perfection on YouTube. They don't want to see the hero. People want to see the dirt and the flaws. That's what they're looking for. I do the same thing. I like to see people, I like to see their human side. I like to see people screw up and fix it. You know, the danger of it, though, is I'm selling this stuff. I can't, I don't want to show me screwing up somebody's pen, but here's the thing. I'm fixing it before it goes out the door. So that's the kind of business this is. These are hand-created items. And when you create stuff by hand, too many mistakes cost us too much money, though. We really try our best to keep the number of mistakes at a minimum. We like to check and double check and triple check every step of the way and catch things before they fall through the net. Uh-oh. Somebody's making noise out there when I'm trying to make a video. Oops. I had a laugh. I mentioned X-Ray Tony B, I think in this video earlier. It might have been in the previous one, but the guy I watched does electronics in his basement. The most gentle family man you can imagine. He's just a lovable guy. You just want to hug this guy. He's so lovable. Just warm and gentle and talks in a nice tone of voice, and you just really want to sit down and, well, 4 left. I'm on my countdown. But so he even ends his videos with peace, love, and joy to everybody. So he's making a video one day and his wife comes stomping down the stairs and starts yelling about going out. He's like, say hello to the people, honey. Just busting out laughing. Just the last thing you would expect from this guy. And I'm sure he was just joking, it sounded jokingly, but you get to see his evil side there. We all do it. Yeah, the danger, you can't judge a book by the cover. I'm wondering if this might be the Princess Pen fiasco here. I think this might be the first blank of it. I think I ended on 8, so I'm not sure though, I forget. Uh-oh. Won't fit. Yep. I know what's going on at that point. Alright, no, that's the 8mm side of it. So that one fit fine. 3 down, 3 left. And I'm cleaning my flutes frequently because it is plastic. So I'm trying not to burn the blank around the bit. I don't want to generate a lot of heat. Oh, whoa, wait a minute now. What? Ah, somebody screwed up. There it is. Somebody screwed up. It's a 10 millimeter. I knew right then. Yep, Princess pen. She got on autopilot and she put it in the wrong stack. So it's rag on Carol time. Not a problem though. Luckily it wasn't the other way around. If she put the 8 in the 10 millimeter stack, we would have had problems. But it's just real easy to enlarge this hole, make it a 10 millimeter. I think she talked about that very thing in her video too. If you go back and watch that, she talks about putting them in the right stacks. It's not easy. It's hard when you're dealing with. It's not just making, you know, 12, 15 of the same kits. You're making different kits. 2 left. You know, you got a lot of. Yeah, I got to stop and think. I could screw up. I don't want to drill a 10 millimeter hole in that blank. That is a place I could have really messed up had I not thought about that. I have gone on autopilot and have done that, and it's like, oh, shoot. Got to put the 8 millimeter bit back. I try to make it a habit to change the bit before I mount the blank, which is why I caught myself. Back to 8. I could have done the reverse of what she did and put a 10 millimeter hole in an 8 millimeter blank, and there's no coming back from that one. Every step of the way, every move that you make, you've got so much potential for error right there. I'm getting tired. And it was really a short session too. But now I don't do it on camera, but that tray in front of the drill press, I also, after this, I do a bunch of diamond pins too while I'm sitting there drilling. Last one, this is a wood blank. You'll see if you watch the glue up video, this one gave me problems. I don't think I showed it on video. Yeah, you can hear I'm going a little fast for wood. You hear the squealing. You don't want to burn. Wood burns real easy with the speed. You want to slow the speed down. Had a problem. I extended my quill too far. I had a problem getting my quill back. And it's tight. And I tried with the file to ream it out, but I think I end the video. But what I did off camera is I actually went to a standard size bit, the next bit up, and I actually drilled the hole oversized. And the tube's a little loose, but it will fill with epoxy. But it was just way too tight. For whatever reason, the wood is heating up and expanding away from the bit, but then it cools and it kind of contracts again. Essentially, the wood's moving. And I'm saying yes, but I know I gotta work on it later. And I gotta show off my little pile of shavings there. It was actually a small session. Happy dance. I'm done. And that's it. Goodbye. And thanks for watching. Guess I will see you next video.